Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. So we've really gotten to the core of what is spelling, and we're not super sure, or are we? So we're going to explore that more today, in more novel derivation, pointing out empirical evidence about language. We've proven a ton of different things, and so now we're trying to arrive at this stabilizing theorem for sensorality. And so sensorality encompasses all filtration done by sentient beings. And so I just have a simple question, right? Because we have to go back and revisit all the basics. Are words spelled, right? And I would say yes. But you might think about it because it's what the intuition I'm getting at is that the right is putting, so what is spelling? Spelling is the order of letters, right? Putting letters in order to represent sounds. But intuitively, I'm just getting at, when I cast a spell, right? To me, that's where the etymology of that word is fairies and casting a spell. And so is that the right word? What is spelling? Do you spell a word, or spelling a word constructs a variable. So we've generalized that idea into, again, constructing a variable. And so what exactly is spelling? Is there a more applicable word? Intuitively, the practical action of putting letters in order is spelling. But then what is a letter and what is a syllable? All right, because spelling, for our definition of spelling, orders letters. Letters are distinct from syllables. And so a syllable, again, that's the word that's really kind of like very generalized, I guess, or not well defined. But spelling tells meaning, right? If I say no or no, it's the same exact sound, but the letters differentiate the meaning of what's being said. Sensorality is telling. Telling indicates. Indicate, dictate. Why do actions speak louder than words? Because remember, we're connecting cliches, we're building out, we've done it. All of this proofing is, again, building up the early universe, so to speak, to get into R3 in the correct ontology, with the correct words to talk about the physical systems we interact with. And so telling indicates, but why does action speak louder than words? Now we're back to, again, my theorem, but it's the logic encompasses, because I guess we're purely in my personal derivation, but the language is, again, still generalized and applicable to everybody. But you say what you think and you do what you mean. So somebody can be sitting there and saying, I'm going to do this, and then 2 weeks go by and they don't do anything, and you're just like, what did they really mean? It's like they had the goal or the aspiration, or maybe they thought about doing it, but did they really put in the work? No. So you do what you mean, you say what you think. But what is meaning at all? Right? What is meanality? Speciality is meanality. Speciality is menial. Menial, speciality. Meniality is triviality. And so what I'm doing is when I pose this general question and then I derive, because remember, we're deriving to a base. And every time we derive down, we start with a new theorem, then we derive, then we get to that fundamental stability of two. You can't break things down past dichotomy. That's with logic. You can't break things down past mass and energy if you're talking physics. You can't break down things past yin or yang or yes or no, also for logic or math, with a little bit of historical evidence in there. And so we're trying to get to this general statement, a complete general statement that we can derive. And again, at one of these roundabouts, we're going to hit this new theorem. To scour is to search. Scouring is meticulous. Score, scour. Sensorality is scorality. Scoring counts. Counting scores. But who's counting anyway? Right? Phrase I'm sure you've heard people say. So what do people really say when they say, but who's counting anyway? It's like, who's keeping track? Is another word that would be used in there. Mentality is attitude. So again, this last couple episodes, we've demonstrated how you iterate these words and then new logic comes from the suffix, but again, that's some sort of, this chronology. We have an assembly line, and we only have a set amount of sounds we can use, and we have to iterate them, and it kind of progresses. It goes from the first in, last out, last in, first out, one of those types of logical things from economics. Something's going on like that. What we show in, again, mentality and orality are exclusive to sensorality with an S. Sentient life has the ability to vocalize, to choose, to speak. It has a mentality, it thinks. And both of those, again, came from progressing this logic to suffix. And so I guess we're trying to do that, and because now a lot of these words, we'll get to it, but a lot of these words were senti, like sentiment, right? That should strike you extremely like a prefix now. And so now we're trying to show that complete iteration of sense, the base word sen, through this entire thing, its entire word family. But what is meaning, right? Meaning is value. We've introduced this thing called the empirical value function. You say something, it means something, it has some sort of value to another person. That value, that meaning is consistent. That's why you understand what I'm saying right now. And then to negate that is the empirical value function. You say that has value and it's not that. It's how you say no, it's how you say not, that's how you say anti, that's how you say on. You know, all of these negating prefixes are negating elements of language. And so meaning makes sense. That resonates with me, that makes sense. You're demonstrating something consistent. The diction and the language you have used applies to this problem in front of us. Maybe we're starting a business, maybe we're developing a math proof, maybe we're writing a grant for a research project. What is the relationship of sensation and value, right? If something has value, right? In this case, it means meaning, but again, we're trying to generalize it to where we don't have to break down to any context. So what is sensation to value? Sensation, I guess, asserts value or determines value. Like if you hear somebody talking for a long time and you switch off a lecture, it's like, you know, there was no value, there was nothing new, there was nothing novel, I didn't learn anything. So I guess sensation just assesses value is what I would say. And so now again, like you can probably hear me in talking when I'm, again, because there's no difference, right? I said I'm speaking in fundamental theorems, I'm discussing fundamental theorems, and so you can kind of hear when I'm talking about something versus I'm switching to something else, but there's no real difference. And so, yeah, I guess that's what I have to say for sensation and value. But what is the relationship of symbols and syllables, right? Because now letter. So like, why do we spell letters? Well, first of all, somebody's, again, forget letters, forget representation, symbols, writing. If someone's speaking to you and say, how do they spell that? A, B, C, D, right? So we have a letter is to a sound, and then a syllable could be to, again, one letter, one sound, a diphthong, just like two letters stuck together. And now even, like when you write the word, not meaning, but like, again, that we can derive that symbol, like that A and the E that are like squished together. When the E and the A, again, this is typically with font, when you have that A that's like written like that, it'll be on your screen. But you can kind of see it like hyperbolic, like it's like an X, like a hyperbolic symmetry. And then if you squish them together, you flip them around, then you get that A and E symbol. And so that's pretty cool. We can derive all of these different elements that get quantum, I mean, nobody's even been remotely close to. But what is the difference between a syllable? Again, that's the big word we're really trying to get is syllable. Do you spell a syllable? You spell words. Words have spellings, but letters also have spellings, right? If I watch my parents play Scrabble and there's spellings to letters. So why, like, what is the fundamental thing? It's clearly sound. We represent those sounds with letters. Those letters can be representative of a syllable. A syllable is it's the most basic unit of sound. That's where the word unit comes into play. And so again, that's that irreducibility aspect. A syllable is irreducible. They combine together to make an irreducible sequence, which is a word. So what am I trying to ask? What are we trying to get at? But symbols to syllables. Syllables are represented symbolically. And again, remember, we have to, I'm looking for something very simple, right? All of this stuff is, again, to figure out the answer. This is the process when, you start a new class in high school and you look at the book and it looks all intimidating. And now we're at the end of the semester and we're looking for one sentence, one syllable, one letter, one something through the whole book, and it feels like we know the whole thing. You start out with something and it's like, what is this? This is so cool and new and learning. And now it's like, holy shit, just give me the fucking answer. But we have to iterate again. We'll keep iterating this logic until we get to that stabilizing theorem, which I know science team already knows. But right, syllability, liability. We've shown that iteration of ality with a bi. Why is it bi? I don't know. But again, we can ask that question again, like why, which letter start each word? Like vision, like vidu, ya vidu in Russian. Again, I'm working on Russian vocab building. And so it's like, why vision is V? Why is, just why certain letters for these certain different verbs? And it's trivial to ask them and point them out. But liability, reliability, right? Consistency is reliability. And so now we have Liability, the ability to lie, some sort of risk. Now, reliability is not risky, right? It's the exact opposite. So again, we have, that Pauli exclusion principle of logic, I don't know, but positive, negative with this iteration of prefix, suffix. There's only 2 iterations because that's our fundamental stability of 2. But consistency is reliability. So that's where, again, we're demonstrating kind of this like irreducibility aspect of language. Because reliability, everyone, I say that's consistency, and people's like, oh yeah, definitely. But then what's liability? It's like, well, it's, right? Literally, it's the ability to lie, it's natural definition. But why does that present risk, right? It's because you're inconsistent. And so again, language is consistent. So that's what we're just demonstrating. The whole thing, all of these proofs is just demonstrating this. And we're trying to get to this forcing, this stabilizing theorem. Sensorality is reliability. Speciality is unrealisticality. Sensorality is realisticality. What is consistency to realistic? What is a list, right? Is and list. You can clearly see that is, or list is built on is. But are priorities ordered, right? Your priorities are ordered. Chronology happens. Every action that occurs to you or anybody occurs in an order. But what is a list? Are lists seretic? Again, when I say seretic, a word you probably have never really seen or heard because people don't do complete proofs. But that word is to series again. Again, series versus sequence. Sequence, I would say sequentiality is a list, is what I'm getting at. And then series contain operations. If you just list something, that's a series or a sequence. I've literally said that. And so it's like, again, we're deriving the same things. And so, but we have this new variable sensorality. And so lists are sequential, sequentiality lists, and series contain operations. 1 plus 1, like the Fibonacci series, right? That's not a sequence. If there's implicit functionality in operation, you're adding 1 plus 1 to get to 2. The next thing, you're adding the 2 preceding numbers to produce the Fibonacci sequence. That's not a series, or that's a series, not a sequence. But what is operation to order, right? If I have something to order, right? Orders give operations. Orders establish operation. What is an operation to a command? Again, a command is an order. An operation is an execution, something you do. It has some sort of adjectivity, right? I command you to go quietly, right? There's our adverb. We're going to go, and it's going to be quiet. So commands give operations, ordering gives operations, commands are orders. Moving on. What is mood, right? Mood is sentimental, right? We drove mentality last time. Now we can put a little hyphen in there, it'll be on your screen, but mood is sentimental. So now we can see this word clearly as a prefix and a base word. Mentality, which came from the suffix of anything that ends in ment, and then you generalize it, you're going to produce mentality. But senti, right, we have sentience, it's kind of just like, we just kind of stuff it over there, amalgamation, horseshoes and hand grenades, and mental, right? Mentality, your consciousness, is unique to animate objects. My pool table does not have a mentality, doesn't have sentiment. So it can't be sentimental. And mood is sentimental. Speciality is moody. Speciality is moodality. Sensorality is modality. Obsolete, obsolescence. Right? Sensorality is obsolescence. Sensorality is solace. Solace is peace. So again, obsolescence, again, all of these words that end in sense, you can just be very trivial to point them out or to see them. And we're just building out this word family. And I'm showing you the order. So that's the uniqueness to me because this stuff comes to me intuitively. Science team has all of my Googling. I might check the spelling of a word once in a while. That's really what I do in terms of referencing any sort of computer for my derivation. Because remember, life is working memory. Everything everybody's talking about is pointing out the inconsistencies or the things we need to develop in our language. So it sounds kind of cool, but once you realize what's going on, it's like you don't need to remember a lot of things, and nobody does. Right? Learning isn't memorization. There's certain aspects where memorization is certainly useful. I mean, I do personally right now, like I said, when I'm conjugating Russian verbs, it's pen to paper. It's the same thing you do in any intro language learning in school. It's the same exact thing. Obviously, I have an intuitive understanding of the structure of language. But building vocabulary, I do the same exact memorization type things you do. But it's really not that relevant. Like I said, like, I mean, I'm at a point where it's like for Cyrillic Greek and the Roman alphabet, it's like I just need to hear the words enough to associate them to the letters. It's like when you hear me reading in Russian, and I'm over stressing a lot of these syllables, and then I go sing a song and it's way more like natural. It's just I haven't heard enough Russian spoken to pair them to the words, and that comes from immersion. And so it's like if I don't use a language, like there's really no point to build vocabulary. But then again, I wake up and I'm still bored as shit, and there's nothing else to do. So keeps me working, keeps me doing stuff. But thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.